T.
All right, I am the Doctor of Truth. Charles Clayton is here. He's running for state representative. You got any doctorate degrees like I do?
I got a couple. I'm probably just as many from the same places as you got yours.
The Doctor of APHIS, Charles Clayton, is here. I'm going to respond to a text. Apparently, it's sinking in when you and Ann are going to be on the air, because I got a text earlier today from somebody who wanted me to ask you about your position on gun control and stand your ground in the state of Iowa. I think we covered that when you were first on, but since I got this text, can you give your position on gun control and stand your ground in Iowa?
Well, first of all, let me say also, along with that, I do not, nor have I ever said I support defunding the police. Somehow that's a negative narrative running out there about me, and we can talk about that after I answer this question if you like, Mike.
Yeah,
but,
I would.
I'm all for the Second Amendment, man. I think there should be more lawful gun owners, and anyone that can own a gun should own a gun lawfully. But do I think with some of the shootings and deaths, murders that we had in Fort Dodge, should we do more to keep guns out of certain elements' hands? Yes, I do believe that.
Yeah. How do we do that, though? How do we know the people in our community they're going to use a gun? I should ask you another question. Do you think I should have a gun?
I see no reason why you shouldn't have a gun,
Okay,
Mike.
good. I was giving you an opening there, but okay. We really don't know. We really don't know who's going to use a gun, and that's the big deal about gun control.
And it is, and it's a tricky subject, but I think we can do better. I think we can look at ways, maybe a little more common sense and nonpartisan, to say that we want to be able to protect domestic violence victims. We want to be able to protect people in the community and get guns out of the hands, or make it harder for criminals to get guns in their hands to begin with. I think there's a way that we can come to the table and talk about this with a little more common sense and really try to look out for our community.
Charles Clayton is our guest, native of Fort Dodge, of course. Thought he knew how to play basketball years ago. Maybe he did. I don't know. But I know that Roger Porter, chief of police in this town,
yes,
has been very supportive of you and APHIS.
Yes.
So I'm a little surprised to hear that an accusation has been made. In fact, I'm a little shocked to hear that an accusation has been made that you are in favor of defunding the police.
I was just as shocked. All the work that I personally and APHIS do with our law enforcement, trying to figure out ways to bring the community together, trying to find ways to help them interact better with the African American community, showing up on a night of Black Lives Matter protests here in Fort Dodge, and myself standing with the police and not the protesters, even though I was in support of their message. I heard that, and it's like, yeah, that's really flying around social media, Chuck. And it was like, really? Like, how is that even possible for someone to think that? So I'm gonna have to make sure I clear that up on Mike Devine, because I've argued with members of African American community, family, friends, that that's not the route we want to take. It's not going to solve the problems that are before us.
No, absolutely not. Black people are the victims of crime.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
I don't get that.
And I want someone to respond when I'm that victim.
That's right.
I want them to do the right thing for me.
Yeah. Well, I think for the most part, we've got a good police force.
I would agree.
Not surprisingly, I know African Americans in Fort Dodge, and some of them tell me that there's one or two particular officers on the force that seem to think of reasons to stop cars with black people in it. I hope if that's the case, I know Roger will do something about it.
And I can say that I've heard that also. I've shared that with Roger, and I know that's something that he is working on, and something that he wants to make sure that he can clear up that that's not the case, why people are getting stopped. So this isn't something that Roger's taking lightly, or he doesn't want to find a way to make sure that if perception here is wrong, but it's beating reality, we get reality to kind of figure this out and tell the truth.
Well, there's too much of this, it seems like black people are being associated with an anti-police attitude. That's really what's underneath this.
Yes.
And that might be, if you're thinking that Black Lives Matter out in the streets in Portland is mainly an African-American thing, you're wrong. Those are mainly white people, white women, as a matter of fact, screaming about Black Lives Matter. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be in the street. But let's get that down. That a lot of people who are talking about defunding the police are white people. The Minneapolis City Council is all white, a bunch of Norwegian folks up there, and they're talking about defunding the police.
And most of the African Americans I talk to are not in favor of defunding the police. I am for, when I talk to other people, for some reform and more training and ways to get better communication and collaboration and partnerships with law enforcement between the African American community. But I don't have an overwhelmingly amount of people that I know that are Black that are saying, we just need to defund the police. That's a false narrative to scare people into certain corners and come out fighting. That,
I think it is. I really do think that is, for the most part, especially here in Iowa. I do think that's the case. We just can't. Well, there's just some white people afraid of Black people.
Yes,
that's all there is to it.
Yes,
that's all there is to it. And I can't think of the last time I was. I have neighbors, but they're older Black ladies, so I'm not afraid of them.
They might still take you, though, Mike.
They might. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, enough of that. We don't want to go down that road. Let's go to taxes. What is your position on taxes in the state of Iowa?
I think that, first of all, when we talk about taxes, let's look at all the major tax breaks we give to start off with, and then we claim there's no money in the budget because we just gave away $20 million in tax breaks. And then that in turn makes then taxes have to go up, or local communities, local school districts have to try to pass certain bonds for taxes. This is a shell game. The money was in the budget. We gave it away in tax breaks. So let's quit playing we got to raise the taxes. No, we just got to be smarter in the front end about how much we're giving away in tax breaks and how much we're letting major corporations get away with, before we start making the common person, the middle class person, the working person, the working poor pay taxes.
Fort Dodge is poorer than it was. And you can blame
closing the plants, man.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And the state of Iowa is poorer in most sections. But after Republicans in Des Moines for a long time, it seems like we've gotten even poorer. Now, I know Mike Sexton. I think quite a bit of him. I admire him. Same with Tim Kreinbrink. But the word they don't want to use around me is it's not sustainable. Well, we can't have this program because it's not sustainable. What that means is we don't want to pay for it with tax money.
Exactly.
Well, why don't you do it and raise taxes? Oh, my God. I should be run out of town on a rail for suggesting such a thing.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, I haven't seen the stimulus. I guess this is what I'm getting to, and I'll give this to you in a form of a question. Do you believe that these tax breaks do stimulate the economy and provide more jobs?
I do not believe that. Look at Iowa as a whole. Look at Fort Dodge. I don't think by giving tax break we have created all these jobs that we were promised. Do some jobs come in the door? I think some do. If we're hard on tax breaks, and again, I'm not saying you don't give any, but you don't have to give the amount that we're giving. And we need to tell these companies that they got to be responsible neighbors and citizens of our community, because some programs do deserve to be funded. We cannot continue to just cut programs and then say at the same time, we have a worker shortage. So how can we give tax breaks not to fund certain programs that maybe help our worker shortage if we funded some of those programs? And again, I just say, I think it's a shell game. I hope I get elected so I can find out more about this and educate myself more on this. But for what I'm seeing right now, they're playing a shell game with people's lives.
Well, that's it. If you want to talk about working people's issues, that's kind of my game. We'll take a drive up in the Vincent, Badger, Eagle Grove area and see who's working in those chicken houses. What they're talking about when they say that there's a labor shortage is that there's a shortage of slave labor, because those Hispanic workers up there covered in chicken manure and making very little money, there's not a lot of difference between what they're doing and slave labor. I realize slavery is kind of a loaded term. It implies ownership. It's not quite that bad. But the conditions they live in for the 21st century aren't, if you look at what happened in the 1860s here in this country as far as actual slaves, there's not a lot of difference.
Well, We'll argue about the slave term later, but
all right. Yeah.
I agree with the conditions of, if we're going to be giving tax breaks and allowing companies to come in here, shouldn't those conditions for those workers there be humane working conditions, good working conditions with good hourly wages and good benefits? We haven't increased our minimum wage here since Culver was in office.
Right. That's right.
We got to do more for the working class. We got to do more for the working poor. And until we figure that out here in Iowa, I think, like you said, Mike, we're just going to get poor.
You might want to take your concerns about the working poor in Iowa over to the Democratic Party headquarters, because I don't think they've been talking about it much. They used to, but they don't now. And
I'm talking about it. I'm talking about
all
it.
Right.
So,
all right, let me talk about the slave term.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Well, I use it not to, as I tried to make clear, nothing is as bad as a human being owning another human being and exploiting them.
Yes.
Which is what happened during actual slavery. But there are conditions that working people are facing, especially these Hispanic workers in chicken factories and sometimes pork plants, that would lend you to believe that they are de facto slaves, in the fact that they can't go back home because conditions are worse there. They're always afraid of being arrested for immigration violations. You want to talk about a shell game? That's what's happening with Hispanic workers in Iowa.
And I agree 100%, but I just think that the atrocities of slavery, whenever people use it like that, then we're downplaying it, because all the other things that went along with that, outside of maybe just working in a cotton field, but being raped, being torn apart from your family, being beaten, being killed, being arms, limbs cut off. That atrocity was so bad. I just think that we water it down when we use that term.
I think you're right.
And again, I don't take it all, Mike, that you're trying to be offensive, because I know you better than that.
No, I'm not trying to be offensive, but I would like to say I'm not in favor of any of the things that you just mentioned. That sounds terrible, but you're absolutely correct. There's probably not a lot of Nazis around either. I mean, the Nazis killed people because they were Jews and they were insufficient in their eyes. They were a true racist, murderous cult. Yes. And I don't know many. I don't think I ever met any white people that belong to that. So yeah, there's a lot of emotional, loaded terms being thrown around. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't use slavery anymore.
Well, just being used, I think, too much. If we're going to move forward in a country, I think that we just all have to be more aware of the wording that we use and the labels we're putting on things. A teacher in Iowa City was recently suspended for an article or an assignment she gave kids about slavery. And just because it was such a loaded term, people are offended that she wanted her kids in her class to pretend they were a slave and write about that feeling. And it really got her in a lot of trouble. And I just think, again, there's certain things that is so loaded and so emotional. We just got to be careful how we navigate around those things sometimes, because most people, I think, in Iowa and in America, we want to move forward, man.
Absolutely.
We want to find common ground. I talk to people all the time that they're just tired of this fighting one way or another for the extremists, and how can we kind of meet in the middle ground and get back to maybe where people are just a little more civil and a little more listening to someone. And if I don't agree with you, we can still go have a beer, because I don't have to agree with you all the time.
It's those white liberal people, Charles.
I don't know about that, Brian. I'm not signing off on that one.
No, that's my favorite thing.
I know it is. I know it is.
Y'all go crazy. So that's why I'm here, to keep them crazy, I guess. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Let's talk healthcare. Your opponent, Representative Meyer, of course, has a long career in the healthcare field.
Yes.
I don't know if we've touched on healthcare here.
I don't know if we have either.
Now, you don't have much of a background in healthcare, as I recall.
No, I don't.
Okay. So your position on healthcare then would be?
My position would be that during a pandemic, COVID-19, I would not vote to evict people out of their homes.
Oh, I wouldn't.
I would not vote to, again, during a pandemic, have people with pre-existing conditions be denied medical care.
I wouldn't either. Is that going on in our state?
That's going on in our district.
In our district?
Check the voting record. I would also not vote to not fund rural hospitals during a pandemic. So I would all for, again, taking care of Fort Dodge, taking care of District 9, and taking care of Iowa, but that's all of Iowa. And those things I would never vote for. You can check the voting record. It happens in our district. It happened. So that's
what do I check when I check the voting records, Charles?
You look at what Ann voted for, and it'll tell you.
Oh, so you're comparing. Did Ann vote for the things that you're talking about?
Yes.
She voted to allow people to be evicted from their homes
Yes.
during the pandemic?
Yes.
And she voted not to fund rural hospital?
Yes.
And what was the other one?
Pre-existing health conditions.
She voted to ban medical care for pre-existing health conditions?
Well, that would be the downfall of saying that we have to get rid of certain things that then people with pre-existing health conditions be left out in the cold.
Okay. So what then would be, we know you're opposed to those things that Ann voted for, or you say that
making sure that we don't ever have an Iowan that's turned down with pre-existing health conditions.
So what would be your plan as far as healthcare then?
Expanding and fixing the things that are wrong with the Affordable Care Act. It's not perfect. We don't need to get rid of it. We need to fix it. We need to expand on it. We need to make it better, because we don't need senior citizens not covered. We need people with pre-existing conditions not covered. Medicaid being privatized has been horrible for the state in a lot of different ways. You've got senior citizens who thought their whole life that they were going to be able to budget on this amount. You privatize Medicaid, and these providers come in, and now you know what? They got to pay an extra $7,500 a month out of their pocket. They have no new income coming in. How is that fair to them when they've paid into that their whole lives? You've got doctors that we want to recruit to the area or to the state, that this Medicaid thing is so terrible right now. We're not going to get good doctors here, and we're losing doctors because they're not getting reimbursed at a rate that they should, or in a timely fashion as they should, because this thing is just so screwed up right now. So my point is, let's take care of those things. Let's fix some of those things.
Well, there is a certain logic to conservative minds to keep that money in an interest-bearing account until you absolutely have to pay somebody. Dr. Menke is the one that we should really bring in here to talk about this. But anyway, Charles, it's great to have you on, and we look forward to having you. Now, you and Ann are debating when?
I believe it's October 5th.
Right, at
Fort Frenzy.
Fort Frenzy.
Yep.
Right.
I think they're going to live stream it too.
Okay. Well, I'll be there. Was it 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock? Or
6:30 maybe?
6:30. There you go.
And I'm not, you also have Luke Fleener and Tony Walker. Right. They'll be there at night too. So
Charles Clayton, thank you. This is KVFD Fort Dodge.
Attention SSI and other federal benefit recipients. If you did not file a tax return last year and have children under 17, you must act now to get the $500 economic impact payment per child this year. You must provide the IRS your child's information by September 30th. Go to irs.gov and use the non-filer tool by September 30th. That's irs.gov. This message produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
How can Staples help you get back to business?
By printing you new signs for the times.
Staples can help prepare your business for the new normal with everything from in-store signage to health essentials like masks and hand sanitizer, and all at amazing prices.
And this week at Staples, get $15 off posters or yard signs when you spend $75 or more.
Save big this week at Staples.
Ends 10/31. Exclusions apply. Limit one offer per customer. See store associate or visit staples.com/signage for details.
Now, more than ever, we need our leaders to focus on practical solutions for the families of Webster County.
I'm Ann Meyer. During my first term in the Iowa House, I worked to ensure safe and affordable childcare options, increase access to mental health services, and address rural Iowa's shortage of healthcare professionals. As your state representative, I'll continue to use my healthcare and education experience to serve our community faithfully.
Ann Meyer, experienced leader, community servant. Proven results for Webster County. Paid for by Ann Meyer for State House.
I'm Phil Gunderson. Gunderson's has a tradition of providing services unmatched in our community. Funeral, cremation, and pre-planning services with certified celebrants on staff, aftercare, video, and customized printed goods that are the standard. We offer live streaming options and community support with remembrance and educational programs. When it's time to look for a funeral home, look to Gunderson's.
Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services.
This is KVFD in Fort Dodge, Iowa, 5 o'clock.
Reassurance. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. President Trump's comments yesterday about the transition of power sparking fireworks on Capitol Hill.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany clarifying the president's non-committal answer yesterday when asked if he would commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses the November 3rd presidential election.
The president will accept the results of a free and fair election. He will accept the will of the American people.
The president has often claimed without evidence that the November election will be rigged and that mail-in balloting will lead to massive fraud. In Washington, John Decker, Fox News.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said it's sad that the question even needs to be asked.
I don't know why the press doesn't make more of this, to be very honest with you. I mean, he says that people swallow Clorox and we hear about it for the rest of our lives, but he's trying to have the Constitution of the United States swallow Clorox.
Well, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell tweeted earlier today that there will be a smooth transition, just as there has been since 1792. The two Louisville, Kentucky police officers